But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
This is HBR News number 191, Operation Chokepoint, Fake Gamer Girls on Overwatch, and Jesus Christ Needs Saving, with Mike J, Mike S, Hannah W, and me, the Doge in Charge. Hello everybody and welcome to HBR News. We have a great show lined up for you guys today. Be aware that we have made some small house cleaning changes. You'll notice that there is a ticker running at the bottom that is sending you guys to feedthebadger.com because since, Patreon is doing its Patreon thing, we have lost some patrons. And I'd like to redirect people to donate directly to us by going to Feed the Badger for as long as that is allowed. I believe it uses PayPal and Stripe. So that means it is probably pretty unstable as well. But please consider supporting us anyway so that we can continue to make content until a better alternative exists. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about Ellie, the fake gamer girl, the return of Zoe Quinn, Jesus Christ's call for help with a child custody case. Yes, Jesus Christ he's going through a child custody case, and more. So stick around, it's going to be a pretty good time and also quite informative. And join us afterwards for the patron-only after show. Blogger Orium Frien, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, sounds like it's an acronym or something, or some kind of a pseudonym, wrote a lengthy post entitled, quote, "Why would a woman become a red pillar?" where they ask what the motive behind caring about men's issues could possibly be for women who go down this treacherous road. I don't really know where they're going to land on this, so we're going to take a look in the after show. So if you want to be a part of the after show, either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon, but don't do it there, actually. Go to Feed the Badger. I lied. Don't do it there. If you don't like, you can go to Patreon. We still use it. But if you prefer, just go to Feed the Badger. And also, if you don't want to wake up one morning to find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. So now that I've absolutely butchered that, we'll go ahead and do the actual show. We're going to start with a story about Grindr. So, Mike J, if you could.
Of course, Brian. So, Grindr, as some of you might know out there, certain proclivities, is the gay hookup app, which it's known as Grindr, faces a lawsuit after a New York man says an ex-boyfriend used it to harass him following a breakup. Matthew Herrick, an aspiring actor and restaurant worker, claims a former partner used the app to impersonate him by creating fake accounts to solicit other men, often sending them to Herrick's place of work. Despite filing over a dozen police reports against his ex, the harassment continued for months. Herrick argues Grindr shares blame for the situation, citing their inaction, and has already filed a lawsuit against them. He states, quote, "This is a case about a company abdicating responsibility for a dangerous product it released into the stream of commerce. Grindr's inaction enables the weaponization of its products and services," end quote. Herrick's case was heard by a federal appeals court yesterday, and a ruling on whether it can proceed or not is expected to be delivered within the coming months.
All right. So it's a personal story, but the big thing is that it could set precedent, potentially, or at least this is how NBC News is framing it, to where it could affect apparently free speech on the internet. So is it already under attack anyways? Of course.
Well, is doxing included under free speech? And how controversial even is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some conflict between federal laws here. So you have there's mentioned in the original story. There's a law that was passed in 1996 that protects social media companies from liability as publishers for anything that is published on their platforms. So if somebody goes, and this has happened with Twitter, there's an account takedown MRAs who like screenshots things that people said out of context and then applies dishonest context to them to make it look like people are advocating things that they're not actually advocating for. And he screenshots things that people who are advocating bad things have said, and then associates them with people that they're not actually associated with in order to smear the groups. So he's using it as a tool of defamation of people that he doesn't like. And Twitter is not liable as a publisher of the things that he says and does under this law. He's the only person who's liable. And since he's from Australia and he chooses to slander or defame mostly people from the US and the UK, he's pretty well exempt. And that has protected a lot of that kind of behavior, but it has also protected people from, let's say, you post on Twitter, I went to Taco Bell last week and I got food poisoning. Taco Bell can't sue Twitter because you said that. And it keeps Twitter from being liable for, it keeps the review sites from being liable for reviews that people make of restaurants and everything. Taco Bell would actually have to point out that you lied against about getting food poisoning there. Not that I'm claiming to have gotten food poisoning from Taco Bell in this conversation. In any case, that law has been cited as protection against this kind of behavior, and it's worked in terms of keeping people from having any recourse against a social media site that is informed that an individual is being genuinely harassed by another individual exploiting their site's services and does nothing. So at the same time, we have this situation where these sites are using prevention of harassment as an excuse to engage in the type of editing that this law presumes they cannot do. The 1996 free speech law presumes they can't edit people's content effectively and prevent that kind of behavior. So they're kind of proving that law is outdated because they've got algorithms and they've got staff that actually can do the thing the law assumes they can't do. Now, what this guy is suing for, his approach is interesting because he's basically saying the company is responsible for the way their site can be used because they have the capability of offering a fail-safe against it, and they don't uphold that. They don't actually use that capability. So it's like suing your manufacturer for your hairdryer for not putting a tag on the hairdryer that says "Do not use while sleeping." Only in this case, you have the original law is in contradiction with the Violence Against Women Act, which is supposed to be gender neutral according to the feminists that support it. So it should cover this. The Violence Against Women Act criminalizes the act of engaging in a course of action using electronic communications that would be reasonably considered to cause someone substantial emotional distress. And I would think that what is described in this story, impersonating this individual and soliciting sex from other men, sending them to his place of work, that would be considered it'd be considered reasonable to expect that to cause substantial emotional distress. So technically, this guy's in violation of the Violence Against Women Act for his harassment of Mr. Herrick. And anytime you are part of the commission of a crime, like if somebody takes my car, if I let somebody borrow my car and they go and rob a convenience store and use the car as the getaway car, they rob a bank and use the car as a getaway car, I'm considered an accessory. So with the Violence Against Women Act making what this guy is doing criminal harassment, and Grinder having been informed that it was taking place and doing nothing to stop it when they have the capability of stopping it, because they could IP ban the guy. And they say if they don't make that kind of an effort, then they would be considered an accessory. So he's already got that, and if he can sue them as a creator of a product that by their inaction enables the weaponization of its product against another person, or if he can go after them basically as an accessory, if you can make the argument that they're an accessory, then his case is really reasonable, in my opinion. Although I think the situation adds to the pile of things that merits a re-examination of that 96 law. I think that law needs to either be eliminated altogether or eliminated and replaced with something more modern. So that's basically my take on the entire thing.
That is an excellent take. I have nothing to add. That's good stuff. Also, just so you guys that are in here with me, I fixed the super chat thing. So if a super chat comes through, it will interrupt us. So you'll have to, like, when you hear the chime, just wait until it reads out the super chat. So just a heads up. No super chats have come through yet, but they likely will. And if that happens,
now there'll be super chats.
Yes, they're super duper chats now.
More powerful than a seething badger.
Definitely like a little locomotive, since it runs over the whole conversation. Okay, so any other thoughts on this story?
Bake the cake. just bake him a cake. I think they like cakes or something.
Mm-hmm. I've heard they're into the sweets. Okay, so I guess if there's nothing else, we'll just move on to the next bit.
But which one? They're both gay. Who gets the cake?
Well, maybe as it turns out, the cake is a lie. I don't know. That's
Everybody takes the cake.
This chat takes the cake. All right, so let's move on to the next story. But give us your thoughts on this one, guys, in the comment section. I'd like to see what you guys think. So, moving on to the next bit. Death metal label. This is the story from One Angry Gamer. More important than most may realize. A death metal label called Ellie Records. I accidentally read this as Edgy Records when I first saw it, which I think is pretty appropriate. But Ellie Records has shut down in the wake of payment processors pulling out. PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard all found the record label high risk and described them as, quote, promoting hatred, promoting violence, and promoting hate speech. As cited by One Angry Gamer, Ellie Records owner Rob said, quote, they didn't even have the business courtesy to inform me they were going to cut ties. I came to the realization of this when I went to process an order and the response message was invalid merchant account. When I spoke to a representative, they informed me that they did not wish to work with me because I promoted hate. I did receive a letter from them stating they were going to end the business relationship. The date of termination was a day before the letter was written and a day before it was mailed. What a great banking service. This was a death blow. At this point, I had no means to accept any form of payments aside from cash or money order, but there is no way to survive on that business model. The death of Ellie Records last month followed another death metal label's demise in November. Moribund Records was axed after PayPal restricted their account based on content-related violations. What were these violations? Publishing satanic death metal and being affiliated with the Church of Satan. Rob of Ellie Records believes that this is an expansion of an initiative from the United States Department of Justice back in 2013 that was called Operation Chokepoint. From One Angry Gamer, again, quote, it was initially designed to curb payment processing for terrorist activities, fraudulent purchases, and money laundering. However, according to Rob, the banks who have been in the news for demonetizing and deplatforming legitimate businesses over the last few months are doing so at the behest of those overseeing Operation Chokepoint. More from one angry gamer. Quote, Forbes published an article on November 4th, 2018, detailing how the FDIC, that's the the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, officials strong-arm banks into cutting off financial opportunities for businesses in order to get them shut down, even if the businesses were completely legitimate. While there's no mention of PayPal in the unsealed PDF documents made available on October 12th of 2018, a transcript of the deposition from senior policy analysts at the Federal Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, R.D. Holofield, explain how the initiative was used to bully and illegally choke off businesses within the U.S. Holyfield stated, quote, the DOJ dubbed the project Operation Chokepoint, since, as described by an oversight committee staff report, it was designed to, quote, choke out companies the administration considers a high risk or otherwise objectionable, despite the fact that they are a legal business, or they are legal businesses, by denying those merchants access to the banking and payments networks that every business needs to survive. So the PayPal, Patreon, and credit card bans may not be coming from a handful of ideologically possessed individuals on trust and safety teams, but it could be passed all the way down from the government, specifically those within the FDIC. There is a bill to overturn the effects of Operation Chokepoint that it has had on American businesses called the Financial Institution Customer Protection Act of 2017. Essentially, the bill would force banks and payment processors to give ample and valid reasons for cutting off payment to businesses, and it can't be for a reputation risk. Although it was voted on with almost unanimous bipartisan support, the bill has been stuck in bureaucratic purgatory since 2017. One other thing to add as well is that a lot of the information that groups act on to determine whether or not a company or organization or even just an individual with a small business, whether or not they are high risk, also comes, and I've seen this in other videos, it's usually informed by what are those two groups? The Anti-Defamation League and the SPLC. So there is that as well, which I thought was important to point out. Okay, Mike, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like extremist Christians have been trying to get like heavy metal taken down forever by calling it Satan, and it turns out all they needed to do was change their lingo, because hate works much better. it's the secular version of Satan, basically. You just call something hate when you don't like it, and evidently this secular religion we have is way more powerful than Christianity ever was, because it's already got to the fucking big bold bastards at the top of the economic ladder or something.
I'm gonna
ironically, it's created the secular version of the mark of the beast. Buy the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, have the wrong opinions, and you can't buy anything. You can't take any money for work. That's exactly what is described in the mark of the beast myth in the Bible, and it's playing out right now. But instead of having to have a tattoo on your forehead or your wrist, you have to be in good with the banks. Period.
Just because I know someone's going to say this, Brian, in the comments, I'm like 99% sure it's elegy, not elegy.
Oh, elegy? Okay, that's fine. I don't know the source or.
It's like a poem or something. I think that's what the word means.
Okay,
that makes sense. I actually have more to say about this. I just stopped because I thought you had something to say about it too.
But it's just the one thing.
Okay. Before I go off on it, does anybody else have anything?
No, I mentioned that. Well, I will say that while it may appear as though this is coming from the government, I have no doubt that people at the lower levels are also ideologically inclined to go along with it. That's all I will say. They are not free from blame. they likely agree with this 100%, and that's that. That's me talking about this from the more philosophical angle, I guess, of like, is this hate speech? Should that be eliminated, or should that be protected, or removed, or whatever? But I don't know that that's what Hannah's going to come at it from. So go ahead, Hannah. You have the floor.
I'm going to get all conspiratorial here, so put on your tinfoil hats. But and I'm going to start with the fact that this is the United States government, the federal government of the United States, finding a way around the First Amendment. The First Amendment didn't exist to protect your right to say "fuck you" on the street in front of people, just because you're angry, right? That's a good side effect of it. That you can't be treated like a massive criminal because you used profanity. But the main purpose was so that people could criticize the government. The main purpose was so that we could object to law and policy that we think is wrongfully affecting us, or affecting us in incorrect ways. And now the government, the people within the government, have a tool in Operation Chokepoint to target entities that criticize their actions for cutoff, basically. And I actually had made a thread about this on Twitter a while back in response to one person basically said, something to the effect of, how do you know that they're not putting tracking chips in people when they're performing surgery, basically circumcision on little kids, and maybe that's why they want to make everybody subject to circumcision and not just boys, as opposed to noticing that it's wrong and stopping it for everybody. My response is that they don't need to chip everybody, because we carry those things around with us already. You have it in your phones, you have it in your wallet, you have it in your computer. We are the Patriot Act set us up to be traced in everything we do and everywhere we go. And if you have a smartphone, yes, that it was Red Moon Blades. Yes, hi, that was me. Yeah, that was you. But if you have a smartphone, every place that you go is tracked. If you turn off tracking, every place that you go is still tracked. And all it takes is the government actually getting the companies that own and create those devices to comply with the requests to access that tracking. So right now they're just making money off of it. They're just selling it to advertisers. But all they got to do is expand something like the Patriot Act or Operation Chokepoint and demand access and lean on those businesses a little bit, and it's theirs. So there's that. But in terms of the whole mark of the beast thing, just take the religious aspect out of it. Imagine it's not a physical mark, and imagine it's not a prediction of a metaphysical thing, but a recognition of human behavior, a metaphor for what people with unlimited power would do if they had the ability to, quote, mark everyone in society approved or disapproved, to facilitate their control over people's behavior. And we talked before about this with China and their credit sesame system that does social credit, basically. That if your behavior is incorrect, according to the Chinese government, you can't travel. You get a credit rating for your social behavior the same way that you would get for your financial behavior. And you can't travel. There are places where you can't shop. You become much more controlled under their system because of that. You're persona non gratis, therefore you can't. That's sort of the situation that's being created here. And it's something that's already done. We know what MasterCard's been doing with payment processors. We also know what social media networks have been doing with algorithms. Jack Dorsey actually said Twitter's staff uses suspension, visibility throttling, and account banning to impact and change people's behavior. So this is actually pretty much a systematic, orchestrated means of shutting down criticism of government authority. Now, in my opinion, and this is something that a conclusion that I've come to partly based on other cooperations between banks and governments. There's a pattern that's been going on since at least the middle of the 20th century, probably before, with the banks, where the government comes along and says, you're discriminating against the poor and minorities. You have to change your lending methods. And they force the banks under the law to expand their standards under which they will accept mortgage applications to accept riskier bets on people who they would not necessarily give a mortgage to. And this goes on for a few years. And people who were risky because they didn't make enough money, or they were risky because they engaged in poor financial habits, end up being unable to keep up with their mortgage, and the banks start to foreclose. And because they have specifically expanded in the areas of the poor and minorities, the banks then turn around, or they get accused of discriminating, basically targeting poor and minorities for foreclosure. And so then along comes the government. You can't do that. You can't foreclose on these people. So then the banks have a situation where they have put out all this money, and they're not getting a return on it. And they do not, they have their budgets like the federal government's budget, in that it is compartmentalized. So the bank itself is not in financial duress, but that department is. And so they come back to the government. Well, now we're in financial duress because you made us engage in these so-called risky lending practices, and we lost. And then they get a government payout. And the candidates that usually approve that, if you look in their campaign financing history, you find that they have gotten huge donations from the banks that are getting the payouts after following these orders. So it's all fake. They're just, then the cycle continues. I've seen it 3 times at least, and it probably goes back. I only looked back maybe 40 years. So 3 times during my lifetime, they've gone through this cycle. And usually it's a game between, the Democrats tell them they got to lend to more poor people and minorities, and then the Republicans tell them they can't, the Democrats tell them they can't foreclose, and then the Republicans give them a bailout and blame the Democrats for their situation. And it strikes me that individuals in power in government, particularly in unelected positions, and individuals who are at the top of the food chain financially, are essentially playing this game with us, both in terms of mortgages and in terms of control over speech. So, like I said, put on your tinfoil hats. But I see this essentially as a play for power among elite bankers and elite politicians, as a means of controlling the general population and essentially cutting off all potential competition with, or means of ending what they're doing, in order to basically keep themselves the wealthiest of the country. And if you think about it, when you're the richest people in the world, it doesn't matter whether you're the richest people in a fabulous economy or the richest people in a shitty economy.
I hate the Pandora's box feminists plus allies opened for all parts of the political spectrum. When they started completely abusing words like sexist, racist, fascist, and nothing means anything anymore. 1/4.
It's not going to read 1 out of 4 properly. But essentially, this situation means that basically we can't overcome this if we don't clean out the government. And talking about cleaning out the government is going to get us targeted by this. So it's going to be a major challenge. Like I'm seeing comments, 1776 2.0, 1776 will commence again. Yeah, to a degree, yeah. I don't think it has to be violent, but it's definitely something that's going to have to be done quickly, because if it's not, it'll be cut off. I don't know how else to explain it other than if criticizing the government gets you targeted with this, and what's going to stop the government from stopping us from stopping them? Unless something like this goes to the Supreme Court, unless there's a way to take this through the courts and actually get Operation Chokepoint determined to be unconstitutional and everything involved in it determined to be illegal, then it's up to a major change in regime, essentially, in order to make this stop. The last thing, shoot, I forgot the last thing I was going to say. And it had to do with, I know what it is. It's
super chat.
Wait, what the hell? Hell is with the voice thing?
That's the super chat voice.
Yeah, it's the super chat voice.
So there you go. The other thing I was going to point out is this Financial Institution Consumer Protection Act of 2017 does, from just the little description that we've gotten, it looks like it does nothing but appear to put the financial institutions in a pinched position between two laws. The only way to turn this back on itself, to get rid of this, is going to be to get rid of Operation Chokepoint itself. If there needs to be a way to deny terrorist organizations the ability to get money from the United States, they're going to have to be much more surgical about it and find a way to target strictly those terrorist organizations. And that may already be present in existing law. There may not even need to be a law for that. They need to just enforce laws against funding terrorist organizations to begin with. So it's not that I don't support reform here. It's that I don't think that this proposed idea, unless there's more to it than is described in that paragraph, I don't think it's going to be sufficient. I think it's just going to end up trapping the little financial institutions like Patreon and PayPal in between two powers, and that's not going to fix the problem.
Yeah, that's well said. I have nothing else to add to that. Anybody else? There's another super chat coming in. We'll just get ready to move on, but first, I will wait until it plays. There it goes.
Don't get me wrong, right-wingers on Twitter thinking I'm a crypto commie because I'm not. 100% behind Trump's Great Wall of America, 2 quarters.
2 out of 4. Okay. Well, we got two more comments coming. Thank you so much, guys, for your donations. I really appreciate it. With that said, we will move on to the next story. Let's see here.
There is one thing that has to be answered, because there's a question asked in the comments. How was the story connected with Chokepoint again, just because they said, or is there evidence they are connected? So here's the thing. The government ordered financial institutions to cut off financial funding, or, like they're not financial funding, that's redundant, but basically to cut off funding of certain types of business activities. And the wording, if I remember right, the wording of Operation Chokepoint's requirements were vague. And among other things, racism and things like that were included. So these organizations, if these organizations are starting to do this now after Operation Chokepoint went into effect, and the FDIC started pressuring banks to comply with it and everything, then yeah, it's directly related. The bill, here it is in the original story. The bill specifies that a federal banking agency may not request or order a depository institution to terminate a customer unless the agency has a valid reason for doing so. Then it goes on and says valid reasons include threats to national security and involvement in terrorist financing, including state sponsorship of terrorism. Then it goes on later, let's see, to talk about, I guess it's not in this story, but I have seen it in another location where it talked about the reasons, including, let's see, reputation risk. The reasons including things like hate speech and racism. And so this is something that that basically the banking agency is pushing the banks to do. And the banks may be interpreting it more widely than the banking agency requires, but that is traditionally something that businesses do in order to eliminate any and all possibility of falling under the guidelines of a law that can get them into trouble. It's like very much like gas stations that start IDing everybody because the law switches from saying it's a criminal violation to sell cigarettes to somebody under 18 to suddenly it's a criminal violation to sell cigarettes to somebody who looks like they're younger than 35. So this is very much in the same vein of over precaution among businesses to avoid getting into trouble with the federal government, because when a business gets into trouble with the federal government, it's deep shit.
CUH combo breaker 3/4 party popper.
Oops.
Gonna have to be quicker than that.
Now you guys are gonna have to learn how to manipulate the robotic voice so that it actually reads what you
combo breaker.
Because anything that's not a dictionary word is gonna get spelled out.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what they're going to do with 4/4. Are they going to say 4/4 or 4/4? Because that's also a time signature as well as a fraction. Or are they just going to say 1?
So next we got to try using a colon to separate the numbers.
Yeah, perhaps.
Are you picturing what I'm picturing, Pinky?
So, like, if you get if you get your colon removed, is it a semicolon?
Or having a motto on an adult site calling me a radfem because I love my mom and don't treat every woman as the enemy that needs conquering 3/4.
I love the pause, the pregnant pause.
Yeah. And also Mr.
love my mom and
Roboto's
don't.
coming in. Another one right now. And then I'm going to move into the next story, okay? So, here it is.
What does count as hate speech currently?
Oh, there's a long list.
I made a video at the beginning of December called Hate Speech Messages for Men, and someone got a 30-day ban on Facebook for posting that video because it had hate speech in the title. So I think even saying hate speech counts as hate speech. So
there you
the
go.
police have been
I think
informed,
you've just
Mr. Roboto,
yeah, and I think you just donated $2 to YouTube. Okay, so next story.
Here comes another one.
Is nowhere near as bad as what feminists are doing in the courts. Yet the fact that the thought passing through their heads in absurd. 4/4.
4/4, there you go. $1, guys. Okay, so thank you so much, Chris Stewart. I agree with all of that. Let's move on to the next story. Overwatch player Ellie is not really playing Overwatch competitively. The Overwatch Contenders is a tournament where special pro players play Overwatch, hopefully continuing the rise to become pro players. Overwatch, for those of you guys who don't know, is Blizzard's newest competitive first-person shooter, team-based. So, it was very popular when it came out. I think its popularity is starting to dwindle now. Team Second Wind recruited a last-minute player named Ellie. Ellie caught the attention of the Overwatch community, however, because she was the only player in the tournament who did not give her full name to go along with her username. She supposedly did this to avoid harassment. Also, she was the only female. However, many players in the Overwatch community accused Ellie of not really playing the game during her live streams. Eventually, Ellie left the team because of the pressure and harassment. Justin Hughes, the Second Wind team owner, said that, quote, on one side, we had people questioning her legitimacy, issuing threats, etc., while on the other hand, we had people acting like they had found their messiah, a female gamer. Shortly after Ellie left the team, however, a representative for Overwatch said that, quote, after investigating the matter, we found that Ellie was a fabricated identity and is a Smurf account created by a veteran player to obfuscate their identity. End
What's
quote.
a Smurf account? How's
I'll
it
tell
different
you.
from a soccer account?
I'll tell you what that is in a second. Let
Okay.
these go
Speaking
through.
of companies supporting terrorists, what about Twitter?
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, I think that I think that Saudi Arabia's caliphate owns more stocks in Twitter than Jack does.
I want to
It's not
clarify, it
terrorism.
wasn't a MGTOW. It's just that I couldn't get anything but MGTOW and adult site through the filters.
Oh, that's weird.
Jeez.
What was that,
regarding
Mike?
Twitter and terrorism, it's not the ownership of the stock that associates Twitter with terrorism. It's the fact that until they were called out on it, Twitter had a rather large contingent of ISIS fighters using Twitter as a recruiting tool, just like they were using Facebook. And when their attention was drawn to it, they were banning people for drawing their attention to it and criticizing the recruiters instead of banning the recruiters. So that's where you have companies supporting terrorism, and Facebook has done the same thing. They are so wrapped up in the idea and fear of Islamophobia that they will protect the people that Islamic reformists are trying to push out of their religion because they are actually damaging and dangerous. And the Reformation that is trying to take place is actually being hindered by this kind of censorship. And whether you agree with religion or not, whether you like the idea of Islam being an accepted religion or not, the idea of a reformation is beneficial to the rest of the public if it eliminates the group that is bombing people and engaging in other terrorist activities. So, yeah, I would say it's fair to claim that Twitter has supported terrorism.
Yeah.
Critter.
So to answer the question, I think Mike J was going to say something about something else. Were you about to say something regarding this Overwatch story? Maybe.
I think I lost it.
Okay, maybe it'll come back to you. So regarding Smurf accounts, I'm actually about to tell everybody what that is. So to reiterate, this woman was suspected of being a Smurf account because she was too good considering the competition she was up against at the time. And so what is a Smurf account? A Smurf account is an alternative account typically used by higher ranked players to hide their identity and their skill and play in lower ranked games so they can destroy people who are newer to the game and less experienced than they are. All that's required to have a Smurf account is basically it's like you buy the game again. So, you have to buy the game again, but then you make a new account.
Create a second account, that's it.
Yeah, you create a second account. Well, I guess it depends on how you do it. Like, if you do it on console, I know that you'd have to either start a second account and then play the game through that, but you might have to buy it again. Although with PS4, you're allowed to like duplicate one time. That aside, it's not technically cheating per se, but it's frustrating because when a lot of people are doing Smurf accounts, and this is a big problem in Overwatch, you can't be guaranteed to know that you're actually getting into a group that is balanced out with, your sort of experience level, because there could be people that are much better than you that are playing at a much lower level. Okay, so continuing on with the story. Ellie's account was really being used by a top 500 player named Punisher Aspen, a streamer for Cloud9. he was allegedly told by, Aspen, which is a different person, a streamer for Cloud9, was allegedly told by Punisher that he was really playing for Ellie and that the whole situation was supposed to be a, quote, social experiment, bro. So though there was a woman that was doing a voiceover while this guy was playing. It's kind of like Arnita Sarkeesian when she does her streams. Somebody else is playing and she was talking over it. Well, basically, this woman was talking over the streams while this guy named Punisher was playing the game. It turns out that she actually wasn't gaming and that this was a Smurf account and a fake account, too. And this is a professional account, so it started like a big shitstorm, right? So he was told that he was playing for Ellie and that the whole situation was supposed to be a social experiment. Many individuals...
Cornhub. Does this work?
Yeah, Cornhub. I think I know what that means. Many individuals claim that women face large amounts of sexism in the video game space, which is why we are told that there are little to no female professional esport players. Professional esport players dedicate large amounts of time and energy to playing their games and honing their skills. Also, when Blizzard was approached, or in the wake of all this controversy, Blizzard hadn't spoken on this specific thing because they were, by the way, this is something else that Andrew, who wrote this up, did not know because I just found this out today. This fake account that was supposed to be part of the Overwatch League, which is basically like a big professional gaming league, you could say, of people who play this game for a living, and they, Blizzard puts on shows and they invest a lot into this stuff, right? Okay, hold on.
Speaking of which, can we Chokepoint Women's March?
Oh, that's not going to happen because the
Yeah.
Women's March is approved. They're gonna, even with the anti-Semitism in the Women's March, the fact that they are protesting for more government-funded assistance is going to be exactly what the quote shadow government, if you want to call it that, wants. Because it's all about creating more job security for themselves, and the more people who are on the dole, basically, the more job security the welfare state has.
Yep. So going back to with this story, it turned out that Blizzard knew that this person was a Smurf account and was not a woman. This Ellie was fake, and that it was actually a professional gamer named Punisher. They knew about this and they didn't say anything. And now that that's come out, Blizzard announced this morning that Soldier 76 is gay. So please don't pay attention, because we're just gonna hit the woke button now. And so this is what you guys need to know. Not all this other controversy. That's not important. So this this is where we're at with that. So anyway, that's basically the story. And you know what? This is what's fucked up about this. So the reason why there aren't as many female professional gamers as there are male professional gamers is of no surprise to anyone. It's because male gamers tend to invest a lot more into the competition, and they focus a lot on getting better. And the women, they don't feel that strongly about it. It's not even that they're not as good. It's at least because they're not as interested. There's a couple of female professional gamers I've seen. They're Korean, so I don't know if that is a factor at all, but they're very good at the game. And yes, they were even questioned on their skill. There was one woman, I don't even know what game she played, but she was Korean, and she was so good that players accused her of using bots. And so she showed up to a competition and let them watch, or they had a camera on her mouse or something, and they showed that she actually knew what she was doing. And then basically they dropped it after that. They were like, well, okay, she's that good, it's real. But when you... Go ahead.
The thing, Brian, is it's not even just that, they're not that serious about getting into professional play. It's that just the women simply aren't there. You look at what games women play versus what games men play, and they are overwhelmingly overrepresented in stuff like mobile games, in things like the handheld market. You just don't have the women.
Does anyone know the exact number? Are their stats?
Exact number of what?
I'm guessing maybe the
female gamers.
But yeah, it's probably a question regarding how many are in
Professional.
different areas and everything.
I watched something about this recently, and it was like when you look at the breakdown of like who is actually playing competitive multiplayer shooters, it's overwhelmingly male. And when you do the spread,
Clara, what is this doing on my computer, Clara?
Okay, go ahead.
and when you look at the spread of who's playing what, it's actually totally normal to see very little to no women in the actual hardcore competitive scene, because that's a very small minority within a very small minority. It's actually totally normal not to see a lot of people, because like I said, the women don't really play these games as much as certain studies will
Right.
suggest. They like to sit there and be like, oh well, most women, most of the people playing games are women, so ha. But yeah, they're counting like housewives playing Candy Crush.
Yeah,
And
well, competitive games in general don't have that many women. If you go to a fighting game tournament, there's going to be very few women. There are some. I know that there's one really good like Tekken player that I've seen some videos of, but very, very few. They're just not there.
Like,
It's just not their
this kind
bag.
of gets, yeah, this kind of gets back into feminists failing to understand the not so subtle difference between equal and identical. The idea that women don't necessarily choose to do every little thing men choose to do, and don't necessarily value every little thing men value, and don't necessarily enjoy every little specific thing that men enjoy, does not indicate an inequality in society. We're allowed to have biological differences in our aptitudes and our interests, our naturally occurring interests, the things that we might have an affinity for, and the things that might click with us, without being considered lesser beings. Feminists cannot accept that, and so they get all pissy about women being in lower numbers in any area that a lot of men enjoy. And they don't just get all pissy about it. They have to come in and take over, take control, and they have to change it to suit women more. Well, if they have to change it to suit women more, that undermines their idea that men and women are the same in every way, that there are no biological differences. So, then they got to turn around and come up with some other reason why it's not suited to women, and instantly they come up with this idea of harassment and everything. It is not illegitimate to question someone's skills when they do something that indicates a potential cheat. And it can be very satisfying to be accused of cheating at something and then come back and prove that, no, I'm just that good. It can be very satisfying to have somebody say, well, you're not capable of doing what you just said you could do, and then demonstrate and show them, what? Yeah, I actually can. And there is the attitude of women who accuse people of harassment and discrimination for putting someone in a position of having to prove themselves. That comes from a place of being fake, almost every single time.
Yeah.
And the rare times when it doesn't come from a place of being fake, it comes from a place of having gone through your life with an entitlement, a sense of entitlement to never be questioned, which is kind of almost unique to women. Guys almost always, if they're questioned in their competency or their capability, relish in the idea of proving you wrong. It seems to only be women who have this. They take offense and they don't even want to have to make an effort to prove you wrong.
The constant comparison between men and women is destroying our ability to find common ground and work together for the benefit of society.
That sounds like we're making a hamburger out of us.
Look, Mom, I are pro-female gamer.
One other thing I want to make sure that is pointed out is that after it turned out that Ellie was a lie and that it was actually a male gamer that was playing, so this means Ellie was literally a fake gamer girl, literally, and deceived everyone, including lying to Blizzard, who covered up for her until it came out and they could not be denied. They still claimed that this was proof that gaming needed to be friendlier to women. They did not take responsibility despite all of that. And they still were like, you see, this proves our point. Huh? What
That
are
is
you...
the thing that kind of does boil my piss over this whole thing, is you had a group of people who were like, hey, we are pretty certain that there's something shady going on with this account, because, I mean, technically there's nothing that says you can't have a Smurf account. It's like considered very poor form, but there's really not much Blizz can do about that. However, what is a super big no-no is having your own account. So in this case, Ellie was real. I mean, she was actually the person that owned the account. It's simply that she wasn't the person playing on the account. That's a huge fucking no-no. That is something Blizzard can and will ban you for. They have done that in the past. It's something I don't know why it didn't happen in this case. Essentially, now that I guess
I know why.
more or less proven.
It starts with a V and ends with Gina.
I hate that this stuff has made being a female gamer special again. We got over that years ago, only for SJWs to place it on a pedestal once more.
That was the goal right there.
Yep.
This is something that I guess a lot of guys wouldn't understand it from the perspective of a female because they've never experienced it. But when you grow up being treated like...
I wonder how this will turn out. PRIIIIM. Hugging face, sparkling heart, grinning face with smiling eyes.
Well, that's how it'll turn out. No, when you grow up being treated like everything you do is gold, and you can't do any wrong, and you can't do any harm, and nobody should question you, and you should never have to experience adversity, and then you run up against real life, where all of those things are not normal. You end up in this cognitive dissonance of, how can this happen to me? I couldn't have been the problem. My behavior couldn't have been the problem. It must be those people. Those people are wrong. Those people have done something to me. I'm a victim of it. And the next thing you know, you're demanding, when you're used to looking at the world from the top of a pedestal, and it sinks because society gets used to the thing that was pedestalizing you. Everything looks wrong because now you're at ground level and you don't have that same perspective anymore. Instantly, you're going to demand that pedestal be replaced. And I didn't understand it when I first ran into it.
Honey badgers, is this voice permanent or test?
Well, I think it's just a test right now. So
It should be interesting. We should test it for a few shows.
yeah, we'll test it for a while.
Yeah, when I first encountered the problem, I first encountered it with other girls because there were fewer areas, like on my side of town, in which girls had that pedestalization. We still had it. I mean, there's no escaping that. You grow up as a girl, there is a degree of you've been put on a pedestal. And so because I encountered other girls discovering the loss of the pedestal and reacting to it, when it happened to me, I had a better chance of questioning my reaction to it. And it took me a while to really understand what I was doing when I did it. But I was able to sort of compare it and deal with it better because of that. But the thing is, a lot of gals, their first experience with that is in adulthood. They've had an entire childhood, an entire adolescence of being pedestalized. And the first time they're not pedestalized in their 20s, it's a major outrage, and they're completely unequipped to adapt to it. And they react like this. Everything is harassment. Everything is, like Sarkeesian said, everything is racism, everything is sexism, everything is homophobia, and we have to point it all out.
Yep.
Well, in reality, it's just a lot of times women reacting to the loss of the pedestal.
It's true. And also, the claims that they were making, like, only a woman would get challenged by male gamers to prove themselves is bullshit. Men get it too. Anybody who, like, it's very common. Here we go.
Did you hear that the game called The Last Night got cancelled?
Yes, we talked about it last week, actually. On the Nerdcast.
I didn't believe it was.
No,
canceled,
it's
though.
not.
Facing major issues.
Yeah, I thought it was facing funding issues. I don't know if it got canceled. Is that news? Is that recent? I know that it was in a lot of trouble.
I can look up.
Yeah, go ahead and check. So yeah, men face it too. So here's another one. Okay, for some reason, some of these are not being read out. So I'll go and read them because I noticed that I think Mighty Balzac gave us a super chat a little while ago and it didn't read it out. So I'll do it for him now. Mighty Balzac gives us $2 Australian and says, "What's a pedal stool?" Get it? And then I believe, he gave us another one, $2 Australian and says, "I'm calling bully hunters. You're fucked now." Yes, bully hunters. I seem to recall them. Nice
I didn't realize they were prostitutes.
I understood that reference.
Well, they're elite female gamers, and as we know, those are just Smurf accounts.
That is what I've learned. There are literally no women on the internet. They're all Smurf accounts and men. That's basically all there is.
But it is absolute news to learn that they're also in the business of fucking people.
Yeah. Okay, so he says the quartering talked about the last night. Recently? Anyway, let me know if it did get canceled.
I just looked on Tim Soret's Twitter, and I'm not seeing anything related to this. Like, the last tweet was on January 7th, and it was just basically him saying, "Thank you all much for the massive outpouring of support. It's really nice moving forward."
Yeah, people are saying... People in the chat are saying it's this news is as of today, so maybe Tim Soret is not saying anything on Twitter, like he's trying to save his game. It might be someplace else. We'll look into it, but if that's the case, then that's one thing we can talk about tomorrow. But we got to move on to the next story. And this I believe is Mike J. We're going to be talking about, and I really don't look. This is not my first choice, but Comicsgate is important to me. I think it's important to larger culture, and unfortunately, this is related, but not surprising. Yeah, we unfortunately have to talk about Zoe Quinn again. I don't want to, but here we are.
I made it as brief as I could.
All right, can at least we maybe get the sound effect from Young Frankenstein, where every time they said Frau Blücher's name, the horses went off, and every time you say her real name, the horses go off.
That's funny. Yeah, speaking of Smurf accounts, so go ahead, Mike J.
So, Chelsea Van Valkenburg, better known as Zoe Quinn, has been making the rounds lately to promote her new DC comic, Goddess Mode. One such promo was with The Verge's Laura Hudson, who interviewed Quinn about her comic. While the interview was your standard promotional piece, the issue many took with it was the lack of disclosure on the part of Quinn and Hudson concerning their personal relationship. It's easy to find the two gushing over each other and recalling numerous social interactions that they both participated in on their social media accounts. Although not illegal per se, conflicts of interest such as these are considered professionally dishonest in the world of journalism.
Again, I say new.
I like how they read it out. New. Okay, go ahead.
That was
Mike.
kind of short.
New.
This isn't Quinn's first conflict of interest concerning favorable coverage, as back in 2014, some of you might recall, she received several glowing reviews from her game Depression Quest from those she had previous relationships with. I think that kicked off something.
Forced anonymity is purity. Attention streetwalkers hate forced anonymity because then they can't MUH vegana.
MUH vegana.
Vegana. I like vegana. Okay,
This sounds like a good character name.
So, but that thing in 2014. God, it rings a bell. I think it started at something on Twitter.
Maybe.
I don't know. It'll come to me later. Since the interview, Hudson has been let go of by The Verge, but it is unclear if her failure to disclose her relationship with Quinn was any part of that reason.
How the fuck did this woman get a job making comics for DC? That's all I want to know. That's
Social engineering.
Her boyfriend is...
And why do men keep putting their dicks in this woman too? Or maybe they're just hoping to. I don't know the story. I don't want to pretend to. But I don't understand. She must have an amazing personality that I don't know about. There's got to be something there. Some special kind of magic. That's all I wanted to say. I'm surprised, but I had to say it. I had to point it out because this is how gross the comics industry has become. This is how gross it's become. Yes, I can hear you, Hannah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say along that line, sociopaths and narcissists do have the capability of charming people in the beginning of their acquaintance with them, essentially.
Yeah.
So that actually, it's not magic, it's psychology. But yeah, people that don't know them will fall for their shit, and they do have the capability of charming people quite effectively. That's it.
True
That's all
enough.
I was gonna say.
True enough. Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know, Mike. Do you want to say anything, Mike or Mike J or whatever? There's another super chat coming through in just a moment here.
I just find it hilarious that she hasn't learned her lesson. You'd think this would be the last thing she would want to do again, because it brought her so much negative attention first time.
Yeah, but it did get her attention. So...
And money.
Yes. It did get her attention and money. And jobs, apparently. She got a job working at DC Comics. She's gotten, funding for her... what was her dating sim that she worked with Chris Tingle or Chuck Tingle on?
Yeah,
that still hasn't
fell through.
Yeah, that never came out.
Last I checked.
So there's no such thing as negative press. She doesn't suffer any consequences though. People around her, they lose their jobs. They have to go do other things. This guy's no longer working at this website anymore. Meanwhile, she's still working on her shitty comic that will probably get canceled because no one will buy it. So I don't know. I don't see, if I was her, I don't see any reason to stop because there's no consequences. And so I guess I'm looking at a larger thing here, because I know that just talking about Zoe Quinn is very, very small potatoes. But when I look at the larger, the what's happening within these subcultures themselves, is that people like this, who are obvious cancer that you should stay away from, manage to stay in these industries and grow careers, and people hand them these things. She's writing for the same, under the same brand that produced Sandman and The Watchmen. Okay? She worked in the same group that had guys like, who's the guy what was it, Neil Gaiman, and the guy who wrote The Watchmen, whose name for some reason fails me right now. And these are the same people. She's on that. That doesn't bother anybody? That this is the case? And I don't think it has much to do with merit. It doesn't have anything to do with merit. I've heard the book is terrible. I've seen reviews. I've seen the book. So, and they're just gonna
in the same way, death metal bands and controversial political commentators sort of represent what they call a risk.
Yeah.
In the same way, Zoe Quinn is what's considered like good publicity, because it's apparently very easy to convince people that women can do no wrong, and if you have a woman like Quinn or Sarkeesian on your side, then that's a mark of moral good. You know?
Yeah.
One of the
It's
things
racist.
that one of the things I find really hypocritical with the social justice mentality is the idea that merit shouldn't be required of women for women to hit the same point in an industry that merit is required of men for men to hit that point. And that's basically every time an industry's consumers assert that if a woman doesn't have that same merit, she doesn't belong in that space. It's called sexism. But yet they turn around and say, but women are equal to men. And if women are equal to men, then they can live up to the same standards of merit in any given industry in order to succeed at that industry. Otherwise, we're not talking about equality. We're talking about tokenism. But that's just my take on it. As far as Quinn being given this position, this is no surprise at all. And this is like we already know that throughout the media industry, whether it's entertainment media, news media, games media, music, any of that, it's all inundated and populated with social justice mentalities, social justice ideologues. So, and they're going to be not necessarily in a great big giant conspiracy with the government and the banks or anything, but they're going to be aware of the attitudes and they're going to be aware of what's going to make them considered good boys and girls versus bad boys and girls, and they're going to follow protocol. And this is protocol. So I'm not surprised by this at all.
Yeah. No, I could see that. I just you want people to have more integrity, but it doesn't look like it. And I don't know, man. Maybe I just think guys like we need like better higher standards. Like really, I don't know. Okay, so I got to read out some super chats because Alison has changed she's changed things so that only super chats of $30 or more will actually be read out. So now I have to go back and read them. And then we'll move on to the last story, which is actually an important one. So Hokie, already read that one. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, Zoe Quinn, the Hoe of Babylon. The Hoe of Babylon. Also, did you see my super chat from Streamlabs? Did you send it to us? I'll have to go log in and look, but I will. Chris Stewart gives us $4.99 and says stuff like this is also how tradcons justify saying men and women can never be allowed to share interests because we must stay in our own lanes.
Okay, wait a minute. That's not a tradcon position. That is a feminist take on a tradcon position. Tradcons do say that it is abnormal for like when a woman is involved in a area of interest that is a traditionally male area of interest, that doesn't necessarily mean that all women are going to be equally interested in that area of interest. That's a traditionalist conservative position. That those are the exceptions, and that it's okay to consider exceptions, and we don't have to think men and women are identical. But they don't say that women can never be interested in things like fixing their own cars, and men can never be interested in baking. So that's really a straw man. There are things that are legitimate criticisms of traditionalist conservative, just like any other basic ideology, but that's not one of them.
Yeah. Then we got Crawl Dragon, who gives us $5 and says, maybe men think if they rub their you-know-what on her you-know-what, it will bestow upon them her magic powers of persuasion. No. I guess it's a sentiment. I wouldn't even say it's nice. I'll say it is
Thanks
a
for
sentiment.
the future nightmares, goddammit.
Yeah. Anyway. Let's talk about something important. So we will move on to the next story. I think that this is something that deserves a lot of attention. The last story is about YouTuber Jesus Christ, who is asking for help in his custody battle. In a video, he tells a story of YouTube helping him leave a, quote, highly controlled religious group, end quote, that some might call a cult. While he left the organization he grew up with through his experiences on YouTube, his children are still a part of this religious group. His own parents have sided with his ex-wife and are trying to stop or strip him of his parental rights. He's asking for donations and for viewers to share and like his video to keep going with his court battle. And so you can see there is a link to the YouTube video to this guy's channel. I have his Twitter up. He's at SoCal Christ. And people call him Internet Jesus. His YouTube channel is just called Jesus Christ. So I will show you guys right now. If you guys can help this guy, subscribe to his channel, give him some words of encouragement. I think that he's also trying to raise some money. He's asking for donations. So yeah, go to his Patreon or his PayPal and give him a few bucks, because he is in a very difficult battle, and this is really taking a toll on him. He actually broke character to make a video about this, which from what I've looked at, he has not done, at least not very often. So yeah, if you guys could help out Mr. Christ and save him, that would be great. So Chris Stewart gives us $3.99 and says, I just pooped my boot in my mouth. Sorry, Hannah. Yeah, he hangs out with Creationist Cat. That's true. And I get that, but he's still a guy and he needs help. So I think that would be that'd be a good thing. Also, maybe I've tried to reach out to him, but he's like kind of like a really big YouTuber, so he's got a couple 100,000 subs, I believe. But it's worth a shot. Anyway.
And this is supposed to be the dominant religion. You don't see Muhammad doing a Kickstarter, do you?
No.
There you go.
Well, you also don't see anyone impersonating Muhammad with their own YouTube channel.
Ooh.
Some would
Well, not
call
if they
that a
wanna
bad
live.
idea.
Yeah.
That might not be a bad idea or a good idea, but I suddenly I'm tempted.
Well, I will speak fondly of you at your funeral, Brian.
Well, I live
SBM, suicide by
I-
Muslims.
If you're gonna do that, you definitely shouldn't do it in a city that has, like, I think the highest murder rate in the U.S. Because they'll just call you another casualty.
Well, I'm actually pretty safe where I am, because I am on the west side of Chicago, which is a really tough area. So
But
I don't
not
know.
the south side of Chicago.
The south side is worse, yeah, but the west side is.
That's where
got its
bad Leroy
pockets.
Brown will get you
That's right.
until someone tougher comes along.
Anyway,
Oh gosh, the situation though. This is definitely something that we need to get behind. I hope he's documenting things, and if this has to do with the religious group, if it gets into the court system and the fact that it has to do with the religious group comes out in court, that might be to his advantage. So I hope he's documenting that as well.
yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I don't really know, but he also started a GoFundMe, so you should have links to all that on his YouTube channel. But
yeah, I noticed because the link to the PayPal, it says that there's a court ordered psych eval for him and his kids. That's expensive as hell, and they make you pay for it yourself. And his lawyer's retainer has run out, so he really is in dire need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely, like I said, check him out. See if you can help. Anything will do. I'm sure he'd be very grateful. And yeah, send him some words of encouragement. So, with that said, I think that's the end. Unless anybody else has any other thoughts on any of the other stories that we talked about, or any final thoughts they want to leave with anybody. No? Okay, just continue to patrol thoughts. The internet, this is what we've learned today, okay? Free speech is under attack. The government knows because you have microchips in your penis and in your phone. And we've learned that every woman on the internet's a Smurf account, and the ones that aren't are unjustifiably making comic books they shouldn't be, and that Jesus Christ himself needs saving. That's what we have learned today on the HBR News Show. So we're going to go ahead and take off. I'm going to get into this story. It's not really a story. It's a blog from Quora by someone named Orem Frien or Fren, I don't know. And it's entitled, Why Would a Woman Become a Red Pillar? We'll find out what that's about in the after show. So if you guys want to be a part of that, yeah, this should be interesting. I don't know what it's going to say. So if you guys want to be a part of that, then you got to go to feedthebadger.com, not Patreon, and we have a system already in place for that. You can use that to set up a monthly donation, join us in the Discord, and come into the after shows. Watch them on YouTube, which is basically like an unlisted video, or you can join in the conversation itself. So consider doing that through feedthebadger.com for now. Okay, with that said, I got another super chat from Zeranx. He gives us $2 and says, that feel when you learn Mary Magdalene is best waifu. Well, unless that's the woman that's trying to keep his kids. I don't know her name, so. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I want to thank you guys for coming on the news show, and I especially want to thank the people who are here with me. That's Hannah, Mike, and Mike. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys very soon. Be sure to like this video, smash that like button. Also, subscribe if you're not already, and leave us a comment. Talk to you guys later. Have a lovely day.